Good morning. We will pay attention to transactions with creditors today. First of all, we will purchase goods on credit that we've done in the previous lesson. And then secondly, the goods can be returned to the creditors and we will receive a credit note if they are satisfied to receive the goods back, and then we will record the entry. When we return goods to the creditor, we send a debit note with the goods to the creditor and we ask to decrease our account. If they are satisfied, they will send us a credit note and then we will record the entry. We send a debit note because a creditor is a liability and has a balance on the credit side, so we want to decrease that account on the debit side. First of all, we will record the entry in the subsidiary journal, and that would be the Creditors Allowances journal. It looks exactly the same as the Creditors journal, except that we will now record returns to creditors. Again, we have to number the credit note so that it will be in number order in our books, the date, and then we will record the total amount that we returned was 400, and in the inventory and stationery account with how many goods was returned so that we can reduce those expenses. On a daily basis, the entries will be recorded in the subsidiary ledger, that is the creditor's ledger in this case. So we have an account for DE traders and Hatfield traders. The first entries, the 5,400 and the 3,400, was completed in the previous exercise. Now we return goods, so we want to show that we owe the creditors 400 Rand less, and if we want to reduce a liability, we reduce a liability on the debit side and increase it on the credit side. We will debit the account of DE traders. We will show the number of the source document and what source document was used for this entry. In this case, there was no returns to Hatfield traders, so it's only the one entry that must be recorded. We will also record the entries in the general ledger. We don't have any entries in the sundry accounts column, so we don't have to post entries during the month. At the end of the month, we will take the totals of the columns and we will show the effect in the general ledger. Creditors, we return goods, so my creditors control must reduce on the debit side with 400 Rand. Inventories was returned. Inventory is an asset. Assets increase on the debit side, decrease on the credit side, so the inventories will decrease on the credit side. Stationery is expense. Stationery increase on the debit side and decrease on the credit side. We are returning stationery, so we must decrease the expense for stationery on the credit side. If we look at these entries, then my debits and credits must be equal. So there's 360 and 40 on the credit side, and there's 400 on the debit side. So the creditors control account is used to complete the double entries in my general ledger. We learned today, we receive invoices from our creditors and we use these invoices to record entries in the creditors journal for all the credit purchases. If we want to return goods, we will issue a debit note to the creditor when we return the goods, and we will send the goods with this debit note and request for an allowance. The business in return received a credit note from the creditor that is used to record it in the Creditors Allowances journal. So because it's a creditor has a credit balance, we want to reduce our creditor on the debit side, therefore we issue a debit note. When the creditor is satisfied to reduce our account, In their books, we are a debtor, so they want to reduce our books on the credit side. Therefore, they will issue a credit note to us. The entries in the creditors' journal and in the creditors' allowances journal are posted to the individual accounts of creditors in the creditors' ledger on a daily basis, so that we can determine every day how much money is owed to a creditor. The entries in the creditors' journal and creditors' allowances journal are posted to the general ledger to complete double entries. The creditors' control is used to record the total purchases and returns for the month. The total of all the outstanding amounts at the end of the month in our creditors' ledger must equal the balance in our creditors' control account. If they are not equal, it is an indication that we made mistakes.